LaCourse, the marketing manager with Stanton Chase Boston. With me today, I do have Tony Johnson. Tony is a managing director over in Alabama. So, Tony, tell me, how are things in Alabama today?
Yeah, things are great in Alabama today, Bonnie. Thanks for having me, first of all. It is a pleasure to be with you, but things are great here in Alabama. Today, the high is going to be about 79 degrees. There are no clouds in the sky. On the COVID front of things, today, the governor just announced that every person inside of the state of Alabama who's 16 years or older can start to actually get their COVID vaccination. So that is great news. The state is, like many others, hopefully about to get healthy, and we're about to do some business because of that.
Absolutely. All things positive. I like that. And I did have a chance to look at your background before we sat down and talked today. From the NFL to sports marketing to education, and you landed up in executive search. Tell me
Yeah.
about that journey. There's a lot there.
So the beautiful thing about that journey, Bonnie, is this. When you really look at it, everything associated with that journey had everything to do with education, and more importantly, higher education. So from me having the ability to go and be a professional athlete, that could not have happened without being a person who was in higher ed. And for me, that was a tremendous opportunity. But after leaving the NFL and then going into higher education as a marketing executive, and then leaving that position and moving over into the sports marketing world, still working inside of higher education. And then after leaving that life, wanting to better myself, then going back into higher education, basically as a full-time student working on a doctorate, it just ended up being to where, hey, all of this has been, will be, and continues to be associated in some form or fashion with higher education. So that's the journey.
Like you mentioned, you have a master's degree in education administration. You're going for that EdD. Where did this passion for education come from originally?
Not having it. Literally not having it. And in all honesty, knowing the realities of not being educated, especially being a person who is a person of color, and having had to endure the generational gaps associated with not being able to ascertain for whatever reason, that has been a driving force for me. When you go and when you are an academic and you read the various literatures associated with the systematic forces that have driven people of color not only away from, but out of education, educational opportunities, that has been a driving force for me to honor every single person of color, regardless of their race, who has not been afforded the opportunity or where that opportunity was taken from them to be educated. So that's my driving force.
Wow. No, absolutely. Speaking more so on education and how it's changing today, tell me a little bit about those trends that you're seeing in the education space.
Well, that's interesting, Bonnie. It's not interesting. I'm glad you asked that question, because here's something that I know about higher ed. The what and the why associated with higher education really hasn't changed since it started in this country in the 1600s, before it was the United States of America, obviously. But the who and the how, that has changed, and it is evolving now more so than we have ever seen it before, because these same institutions are now gonna have to try and find, not only try, but find professionals who also look like the same people that they're serving. In addition to that, those same professionals are gonna have to also have the intellectual capabilities to innovate, how they disseminate knowledge, but also these same individuals are going to have to know how to maneuver within inside of the academy, meaning higher education, to implement and to create innovative platforms that can communicate to all of their constituents.
Absolutely. I completely am with you. To get a little personal now, we have talked a little bit before about your experience in the NFL. I did mention it just quickly there, but let's get into it. Football. Tell me, growing up, was there any player that you idealized?
You know what? Obviously, Tony Dorsett, right?
Hmm.
You have the Tony Dorsett of the Dallas Cowboys, and various others across the NFL, because those were the days of not they were that era did not have what I'll call the patriarchs of the business, but it was an era before them. But there were some fantastic players: Drew Pearson, John Mackey, and I can go on and on and on and on, right? Talking about all these great football players. I have had the privilege, Bonnie, because of my sporting journey, to be taught, mentored, and coached by some of the game's very best. Starting in college, Gene Stallings. He was on the original. He was one of Coach Bryant's players at Texas A&M, and he went on to also coach for Tom Landry,
Hmm.
and then became a legend within it with himself as a head coach at Alabama. I left Alabama, went to Philadelphia and played with for Ray Rhodes, and left Ray Rhodes and went to New Orleans, where I had Jim Mora, and then Mike Ditka,
Hmm.
and left New Orleans and went to Detroit, where I had Coach Bobby Ross, some of the game's best and brightest minds and leaders. And this is how I have formulated and developed my business acumen, as well as my drive for success, based upon principles that were learned from these fantastic individuals.
No, absolutely. Well, Tony, thank you so much for sharing that journey with us, sharing what you've been able to do at Stanton Chase, sharing what's going on in the education world, but more importantly, telling us just a little bit about you.